The whole world slowly since the 90s became smaller and smaller and smaller, and everybody's looking at a screen, right? And that's what's been happening for the past however long. And then we got hit with this pandemic, and now that's all we have. And people are like, I'm fucking tired of this thing. You know what I mean? Like, I want something like that's human, that I can touch and experience and all that stuff. Like, I got rid of Facebook. I got rid of Twitter. The only reason I got Instagram is because I'm a visual person. I like visual art.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Origins podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin. All right, well, today we're paddling into rock legend Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, Chili Peppers, just guitar hero and rock legend overall. And we're going to talk marketing, music, and what he's up to. He has such an incredible background. He's such a really amazing human being. I mean, you'd just be so surprised when you hear some of his background story and sort of what he's up to right now and his heart-centric focus that he's really helping others. So I think you're going to find this to be just an incredible episode. And without further ado, let's paddle in. Welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, and I'm your host, Scott Martin, and today I'm here with an outstanding human being, someone that I've gotten to know over the last little while, Dave Navarro, who anybody that hears that name must know who you are. You have to be on a rock if you don't know who that is, but what you might not know is he's somebody who he's got an incredible blade of attention on what's going on in the political environment. He's got a keen sense of understanding of what is now in culture. He's driven a lot of culture, and he's got some amazing new projects that I want to dive into. But most importantly, I feel like he's one of the people that can really unlock some ideas and insights around how to build an organic groundswell and basically beat the system to make massive impact. So welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. For those of your listeners who don't know, Scott and I met on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign.
That's right.
That's where we first met, and we've become friends ever since. And I reached out to Tulsi not too long ago.
Oh, did she get back to you?
Oh yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah,
it was very nice.
I'm one of her biggest fans. Like, she's amazing. Like, after working on that campaign, I just, the longer I got to know her, the more I was like, I have so much respect for her. I can't even believe that the party didn't lean into getting her a move ahead. Like,
well, not only did they not lean in, but they actually
blocked her.
Did everything they could to get away from it because of the whole, look, I'm not going to try and dig up all last year again, but let's just put it this way. I'm relieved that we are going back to corruption as we're used to it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's like
there has been
the least disastrous option, maybe.
Well, I mean, like, if you think about corruption in politics, it's always been there. If you think about Abraham Lincoln, they did counterfeit tickets to get into the convention to get him more delegates to get elected. I mean, it's just record. It's just history. Oh yeah. I mean, like, there's been corruption and cheating in politics since politics began. And certainly there's a lot of theories about JFK winning Chicago, handed to him by Sam Giancana from the crime family. And that's where that whole thing went. But, after what we've all lived through, it's like, I'm really upset that they shoved Tulsi out of the race, and they did it really in a horrible way. But at least we're back to corruption as we know it, rather than, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, at least it's a step. Like, we're getting out of crazy land and back to just normal corruption. I mean, the craziest part about corruption, when you think about the Nixon administration and Watergate and all this stuff that he went through and pulled, he won by a landslide. There was no need for any of that. It was all just narcissism and paranoia and ego. But if he, you know what I mean? Like he was his own worst enemy, much like, well, as of today, the current president, just worst own enemy. And I, for one, and I've said this in bands and I've said this in politics, I can't have somebody who's his own worst enemy be my leader.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work.
So when you and I first met, it was actually quite awesome. Like you had made a comment about Tulsi, and I just reached out to you on Instagram and messaged you, and then we just kind of like tumbled into getting you on a long Zoom cast live feed with Tulsi. And I think today, if I'm not mistaken, it's still the most viewed video that she's ever done.
Wow.
It's like, and it still gets tons of views. And if anyone ever watches it, just at a point of view, that just underscores the surprise I had when I got to know Dave. And the more I get to know him, I'm always like, you always get funny because I'm always laughing because I'm like, oh my God, you just are like this multi-dimensional individual that has all this depth that most people have no idea.
I think part of that is my own fault because, you know, being in the rock bands I've been in and obviously being through some of the things I've been through on a public level, you know, it's very easy for people to paint me with a certain brush, I suppose. You know, I'm an ex-drug addict. I was married to Carmen Electra. I was in the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jane's Addiction and kind of had, you know, whatever kind of persona. And especially when MTV used to play music, back when I was on it, you know, I put out probably a lot of false, I don't want to say false, but maybe there was definitely a sense of theatrics. Let's put it that way. It's not false. What we tend to do as artists is we'll take a really true part of our persona and blast it as huge as we can to hide from all this other stuff that we don't want you to see. So like we'll take...
Not like everybody though.
It is, but especially with artists, when you're putting it out on a global level, that's how the globe sees you. You know, so I take responsibility for that, I think a little bit, but I take what you're saying as a compliment to find me multidimensional because by my own admission, I spent a lot of years putting out one dimension, you know, so I think that's why it catches people by surprise.
Totally. And, you know, if I look at like some of the work that I'm seeing today, it's like this is a marketing show. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe just to connect, like, you know, I wanted Dave to come on because, you know, some of the projects that he's currently working on are about making change, and marketing is all about change. And whether you're in a band, whether you're trying to change corruption, or, you know, I think we'll love talking about your art project, your movie you produced, and your new brand that you've been working on. To me, it's all about change, right? To some degree, right?
It is. And it's so interesting that you're talking about Groundswell and marketing. And then now you reached out to me to talk to me about the things I'm working on, because both things I'm working on, which is Dual Diagnosis, which is, it's a clothing company, it's fine art, there are art installations, the number of things that we do. And it's me and my partner, Padilla, just the two of us. And we're doing everything DIY. And the film that you're talking about, Art of Protest, which is a film which was basically about artists around the world, essentially in decline, which is an art. It's a collective taking out the Trump administration and trying to shine the light on the truth so that people can make an informed decision, which they have. All these things are things that I refused to, like, I don't have a publicist. I'm not paying somebody to hawk my stuff. Like, I don't really care, because when you're talking about change and you're talking about making a difference, it's just like on an airplane when they say, put on your own mask before assisting others. You can't change anything unless you fundamentally change, you know? So that's what I've been working on all year. So 2020 gave us a really horrible set of circumstances to deal with as human beings. What I chose to do with it, well, the first half of it, I struggled with, just like everybody. And then I was like, well, I can perish in this and suffocate and isolate and really do harm to myself, or I can take this year to dive inwards and really assess what matters to me and what I care about, what I love and what makes me happy. And I found that that playing music with people I love makes me happy. Working on art makes me happy. being a voice for people who may be struggling with mental illness or just feel like outsiders, that makes me happy, because I've felt that way. And I'm certainly, I'm an ex-drug addict, so I have great empathy for those who are struggling with drug addiction. But those projects are all DIY, like from the ground up. Like I'm not spending money with like people to get us into Saks Fifth Avenue. I could really give a shit about that, because it's the process of doing that makes me happy. And it's the process of creating that makes me happy, without an attachment to the end game. So in my case, and this may not work for your show, but I'll just be honest. In my case, I'm not looking to make X amount of dollars. I'm not looking for more fame or less fame. I've already received everything that I could possibly ask for out of life. So now it's really just about doing what I like and what's authentic. And in this same vein, it's because of those things that you reached out to me, and I'm gaining more marketing as a result of staying authentic. Because had I been doing something that's like, bam, 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 look at all this stuff, you might not call me for your podcast, you know? And so I think that that's what truly resonates. And in terms of global change and fundamental change with societal change, I think that people need to take stock of who they are and what they want, and try and find a way to live in the moment, as opposed to full of expectations and outcomes. And, I mean, obviously we have expectations and outcomes, and we'd like to see peace. We'd like to see people happy. We like all those things. We all fight for those things. But in terms of personal gain and personal, like, what's in it for me? Like, I've had 30 years of what's in it for me, and I was still miserable, So it's really, for me, it's the process of giving back that I find any kind of peace. It's a long-winded answer, I know, but
good one. So my book that's coming out, my second section of the book is called "Give is the New Get," and I believe that there's a cultural shift that's happening with business. That there's this almost like social enterprise that's arising. That's a cultural change. That businesses that are focused on not on their outcome so much about the profitability, but like, what are they doing to connect with their audience, the people they aim to serve, and being forces for good. I believe that we're at the beginning of what is going to be a very big groundswell of change around commerce, that people are not accepting. There's like this, even after COVID, right? Like COVID, you watch somebody that's sort of like over embellishing on something, and something about it just doesn't feel right because so many people are suffering. I think that age of attention we just left, and we're moving to this age of trust.
I hope so. I hope you're right. I've been hoping for that, and been hopeful of that. And I think, just like everybody else, I was a little disappointed that there was no magical stroke at midnight on the new year. And then 21 was just all about rainbows and happiness. I did have, I admit that I hoped that was going to happen, but 2021 came, and I've seen a lot of death, and I've seen a lot of suffering, and we've lost people already. And it's, it's only January, whatever it is. And, we've lost people. So people are suffering, people are struggling, people are dying. And for me to make my life about a financial outcome in a business sense, sure, I have a bottom line. I have people that I have to take care of, and there's employees, and there's, you need to earn to stay afloat. But I'm not about to go about any of that in a harmful way, in an egotistical way, in a self-serving way, because that has never served me anyway. And ultimately, all I really have is the here and now, and I have no control over tomorrow, and I can't change yesterday. So what you're doing and what you're living with is what you get, because there's no guarantees. So if I dial it back, a lot of younger kids will ask me if I have any advice for upcoming musicians, and I always say, yeah, my advice is make sure that you fucking love what you're doing. Because if you think that there's a girl or a check or a red carpet in your future, you're doing this for the wrong reason,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of businesses, I think that's like when I'm coaching a lot of businesses that, because I'm working with founders that are either they have an established business or they're startups and they're looking for obviously a good growth hack, or they're looking for rapid growth. And what I'm recognizing is when there's congruency with the owner, there's an alignment with some social outcome in addition to the business that has to make business sense, is that this got way more legs to it because people now want depth. And when I'm looking, when you said you're doing do-it-yourself marketing, you're no stranger to marketing. I mean, you've seen everything that exists in my mind. Plus, your background. Wasn't it true that you told me that wasn't your dad in marketing? I think I recall.
My dad was senior vice president of Gray Advertising.
Right. You and I had this conversation once. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up at a drafting table. I mean, I literally a drafting table where you would rub the letters off on Letraset. Like there was no computers. You know what I mean? It was like, I toured that way, actually. I mean, that's my background is marketing and advertising and so forth. And, I learned a lot, and I've been in a lot of really highly marketed things. Ink Master was highly marketed, Jane's Addiction, Red Hot Chili Peppers, so forth, and in every one of those areas, I've had times where I've been mortified due to the inauthenticity. And I don't want to walk around feeling like that, and I feel fortunate because I've had a lot of things, and I've achieved a lot of things, and I've also achieved a lot of things knowing that they weren't the answer. So once you, as a young kid growing up going, if only we make X amount of dollars, if only we get a gold record, if only we this, if only that, you get to those different levels and like you're still stuck with yourself and you're like, wow, that thing didn't fix anything. Wow, the gold record didn't fix anything. The money didn't fix anything. The girl didn't fix anything. The fame didn't fix anything. Then where do you go? What do you have left? Well, it's time to get honest is what it is. And it's time to look inward and say, well, what does make me happy then? What does bring me joy and peace and connection, And so that is what I've spent the last year focusing on. And I got to tell you, man, what you're saying really falls in line to what I'm thinking. I mean, of course, we all need to make a living. I'm not saying that I'm doing everything DIY to thwart a living. I want to make a living, but I want to do it on our terms so we can remain authentic. And if we remain authentic, then we're going to hopefully penetrate human hearts.
Yeah, it's like I think that when you say being authentic, I think I was just you and I were talking before, but I was trying to get into Clubhouse, right? I was hosting a Clubhouse for like 3.5 hours where I was doing a Q&A with some other people, and that came up over and again about being authentic. And the idea of being authentic is, I think it has a magical change, which is when marketing you think of as being push, like let's go get attention, let's go. What do we have to spend to go and push it out there, as opposed to pull?
Yeah. Well, as they say in 12-step programs, attraction, not promotion.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's why people who are members of 12-step programs don't go out and knock on doors and tell people, you got to read this book. They live their lives the way they live their lives. And if somebody's interested, they say, how are you so happy? And then they tell them how. That's the key.
I believe that is the future potential, anyways, of my vision of my hope to change marketing, is that we move away from interruptive and push into being authentic, doing good, and attracting. And
I know that for some of your viewers or listeners out there, that authenticity and authentic is definitely a spiritual new buzzword that's going around, but it's no different than being, it's really the same thing as honest. It's really the same thing as sincere. It's really the same thing as compassionate, empathetic. And that's really all I mean. And I know that sometimes, like, even there are people that are put off by certain verbiage, and you have to be conscious of that as well. And we try and speak in a very fun, in like a very general way, Also, the company that I'm working on, which is called Dual Diagnosis, is aimed at
Sorry, can I ask you, where did you come up with the name? Because remember when I talked to you, you were going, "Hey, dude, I'm not going to talk to you for a while. I'm going to shut down my Instagram. I'm on a project. It's going to be lights out, and I'll get back to you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay." I didn't hear from you forever. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you popped up, and then the next day or within a week, I just happened to watch Silent Live, and I saw it. I'm like, I think that's Dave's company, and
Yeah.
it's blown up since then. So can you walk us through what was the idea? How did you get into it? And then how is this groundswell that gets just everywhere now?
I don't know. And I appreciate that. And here's the thing, here's the truth about that, is that Dual Diagnosis is basically it's a clothing company / we do foreign art. It's art and clothes basically.
Right.
And me and my partner Padilla have been friends for 3 years. We both suffer from mental challenges and emotional difficulties, much like just about everybody on the planet, whether they want to admit it or not.
Yep.
You know, and we decided that we were tired of being shameful about our ailments. We were tired of feeling outside. We were tired of feeling less than other people. And it occurred to us that in sharing our vulnerabilities, we gain great strength, and that in being honest about who we are and what our needs are and what's best for us and what makes us different are in fact incredible superpowers that have generated all this massive creativity for us. We call ourselves Dual Diagnosis for the obvious reasons. That's a very frequent used psychiatric term when somebody has multiple ailments. Mm-hmm. And there are 2 of us in the company, hence dual. And then our logo is a Rorschach design, which can be viewed as a moth, because there's 2 guns, and I
thought it was 2 guns.
Yeah, look at it again. It's a butterfly. So like people don't know what it, you know what I mean? It's dual, but the dual, the way we spell it, DUEL, is because when you struggle with mental illness and you're not working on it, it's about the same as pointing a gun at yourself or at someone you love. So that's how the idea came about. It actually came about because I was driving around in New York City and she was in Los Angeles, and I said something to her because we do art on the side. Just I do art, she does art, and we were just 2 artists. And she laughed at something I said, and out of that moment, this whole thing was born. Now, what you're talking about on Saturday Night Live was my pal Taylor Hawkins and the Foo Fighters, who's just happens to be a buddy of mine. And I said, "Hey man, here's a shirt." And I threw it to him. Well, he wore it on Saturday Night Live, and you ended up seeing it. So like, that's about as natural as it gets. Like, yeah. I did, you know what I mean? It's like, if I reached out to famous people and said, "Hey, will you wear this or that?" Like, sure, I've given it to friends of mine, people I know personally, but like, you know, the days of like the care package to whoever, Lady Gaga or whoever you think is going to give you some traction on social media, those days are over. Mm-hmm. Fuck that, because that's desperation. They can smell it, the public can smell it, and you feel it, and it's nobody wins. You know what I mean?
There's a certain energy to it. You just can tell.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, we want to make a living, but we're not in this for the money. I'll be honest with you. I've made lots of money in my life. I've lost lots of money in my life. I may make it again, and I may lose it again, but like, that's not what this partnership is rooted in. Mm-hmm. You know, if I wanted to make money, then I would probably be fucking standing up to my heels in shallow water with some really inconsequential thing that means nothing to anybody. Mm-hmm. What we're getting back is testimonials and unbelievable feedback from people who have been like, "Man, I have felt so alone my whole life, and thank you guys for doing this, because I kind of feel cool now." And I'm like, "You are cool." Like fucking Van Gogh was one of the most brilliant artists in the world, but he was fucking insane. You know, he made it work for himself, you know? And I'm not saying that we're doctors and that we have the answer for anybody. If we have any solution, we share it for free. If you go to our website, there's a manifesto, and like, you don't got to buy anything. Here's what we're thinking. Here's what we believe. The message is totally free. If you want a fucking shirt, you can buy it. If you don't, take the message and be on with you. And I think that's what's really been exciting about it for us, because we're in my mind, it's already done better than I ever imagined, because
Well, and the cultural timing of it is perfect. If you think about the need for mental, like people's, there's so much like anxiety that, and also the topic has been brought to the surface.
Mhm.
It actually is pretty timely. Like, and I don't think that was planned. That was just,
No, because the project started, excuse me, it started 3-4 years ago. It's just taken us this. It's just taken us this long to get it off the ground,
right.
because it's hard to start a business. It's hard to find a manufacturer. It's hard to get all those ducks in a row. And I'm wearing one now, and like I'm one of these people that's really, I'm really issuey about fabrics. Okay, like I want something that's soft. I want something that you can't feel the design against your skin and have it all like scratchy. So it took us a year to find the fabric and the person that could mass produce this in a way that we wanted, because I wasn't going to put out something that I myself wouldn't want. You know what I mean? Just to turn a buck. Sure, there's a million outlets where I could get $2 t-shirts and slap some shit on there and put them out there. That's not what we want to do. We want people to live and breathe and sleep in these things. And that's what I do. And that's pretty much all I wear, because I designed it to be comfortable. But so a lot of time took place, and little did we know that the world was going to go through what it has been going through when we launched. And I appreciate you saying it's timely, but we had no concept. We weren't even trying to capitalize on a state of affairs in the world. It just was timing, And well, I think,
when you're just in your zone, you're just in your zone. I mean,
and I really have to say, and this may resonate with somebody, and this may make others throw up, but I really think that there's like some cosmic thing at hand here. If you want to call it God, if you want to call it the universe, whatever your spiritual understanding is, or just coincidence, whatever that is, that's all it is. We didn't aim for anything. We weren't like, let's wait till there's a pandemic and the president is out of his mind, so everybody's freaking out, and then put this line out. There's no way to do that.
It's funny you'd say that, because I'm totally breaking, really interesting boundaries with my own podcast. I just had Master Co, who is an energy healer, and he's a highly recognized around the world. Tony Robbins has him on the stage and so forth. And we talked about energy and marketing, which is like most people marketing. It's all about data. It's all about design, copywriting stuff. And that there's actually an element that can actually have impact in spirituality. So I'm actually going down the path. I'm interviewing Guru Singh, who's a spiritual leader, and I'm bringing him on the show to talk about. I literally just did an interview with Tulsi Gabbard about politics and her view of building a groundswell, one handshake at a time. I believe that there's been this big sway towards data and these platforms like Facebook and stuff. And I believe that's going to come back to this word of mouth, which is what you're doing. It's more word of mouth. And I think that's how to build a groundswell, because people want to trust the word or the recommendation, or they want this more human interaction. I want to go back to being human. And I believe that this is a spiritual, I think businesses are a spiritual journey.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll tell you, man, like the whole world slowly since the 90s became smaller and smaller and smaller, and everybody's looking at a screen, right? And that's what's been happening for the past however long. And then we got hit with this pandemic, and now that's all we have. And people are like, I'm fucking tired of this thing. You know what I mean? Like, I want something like that's human, that I can touch and experience and all that stuff. Like, I got rid of Facebook. I got rid of Twitter. The only reason I got Instagram is because I'm a visual person. I like visual arts, and so that's the one platform I have. And I could frankly, excuse my language, give a shit what anybody thinks of. And here's another thing. I have my comments off. Like,
I noticed that you took it off this time.
You know why? Because somebody who has an opinion in Wichita that I don't know who they are, they're not entitled to share that with me. Why have we all of a sudden normalized that? The human condition, the human being, our brains, our bodies, were not made to share things on a global level and hear what the globe thinks back. That's just not our physiology. That keeps people in elevation and cortisol levels through the fucking roof. You know what I mean? That's where panic and trauma comes in. I don't want that. Like if I know you and I'm following you, go comment away. but like, I don't care what somebody has to say or comment about. So I just turned it off. And if that hurts my business, so be it. I'm still a happier person. And I don't think it matters. And so I think that what you're saying is true. Like, now people are fucking tired of looking at this thing. And, you know, we're all hunched over looking like this all the time. And like, who wants to live like that? I don't. And I am one of the first people to say that I was a sucker for social media. I bought into it. I was a proponent of it. I used it every day. I still would admit to you that I'm somewhat, you know, struggling with the Instagram addiction. And like, you find yourself with 5 extra minutes and then you find yourself going like this, like, you know, it's going to take some reconditioning here, but I'm working on it. But as soon as I turned off the comments on a general level, like, my life just became happier. Like, there's something to be said for that. Like, I don't know why it has happened where the world just thinks it's entitled to telling anybody they want anything they want at any time they want.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
There's no consequence behind a wall, and they're just this one way. Like, they're just dropping it like a little bomb, like a little.
Well, you talk about the Groundswell, and you talking about that stuff. Like, my band Jane's Addiction started in 1985, 1986, before all this stuff, and the only way we got anywhere was by word of mouth. We made flyers and handed them out on the street and hoped that people would come, you know, because we loved it. And that's what resonated with people.
And I think that's what we're going back to a greater extent.
I really hope you're right.
There's this one platform I got to tell you about that we talked about before, which is Clubhouse.
I don't know anything about Clubhouse.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about it because I think it's really relevant. I've been on it a fair bit lately to kind of really immerse myself. And it's a voice only platform. There's no liking, there's no commenting. All you get is like a little thumbnail of the person, and you get invited to a room. Someone will host a room, and it'll be on a topic. There's one on mental health.
That's cool.
That's by Brian Fanzo, who I'd love to introduce you to, because he's doing huge visibility and in the workplace around mental health and stuff like that. He's a great advocate, and he was just in my panel with me. And we did a panel, and it's basically, you could have like a panel of a couple people talking, and the people come in the room and they go, we can either be talking amongst the panel, or we can invite someone from the audience to come in. And what it is like one-to-one conversations, and everyone's sort of listening. And what it is, because there's no screen, there's no video, no liking, what I found is it's fostered this community of like helpful conversations. Like, we're in a coffee table and caring. It's like, I can't describe it. It's like, it's like everything I ever wished social media to become.
Yeah,
I think this is it. It'll probably find a way of getting wrecked, but
but for now, that's great. I mean, everything found a way to get wrecked. But like, when it's just your words and your voice, first of all, you can hear the vulnerability in the actual spoken word, and you're taking away the visibility. There's very little room for ego to be a part of that, and narcissism and all that ugly shit that's on Instagram and everywhere we look. It has to be, you have to have a brain in your head and be able to articulate what you're thinking in order to take part in that. Where everything else, you don't have to have those things necessarily.
Totally. Like, if you're a charlatan, you'll die.
Yeah.
If you're a genius and you're here to help and you want to serve people, you will rise.
Well, here's the other thing. You also have to be willing, like, if I was to participate in that and I said a certain thing and someone else said, actually, Dave, it's this way, I would be willing to go, wow, you're right. I was wrong about that. I never thought of it that way. Like, if you are willing to be wrong and not willing, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to be wrong about stuff. It's okay to change your mind. Like, this is the number one thing I've never understood about politicians when they quote unquote flip-flop. Why have they never just said, I changed my mind? Like, I've never heard anybody say
either. I'm like,
I'm like, what? I changed my mind about a million things my whole life. Why can't a guy change his position? But he has to back it up with, no, I never said that. What I meant was this and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, how about I'm a human guy and I looked at it again. Why didn't Judge Kavanaugh go, you know what? I was a drunk kid. It was a party and we were underage drinking and it was unsupervised. And I may or may not have, I don't remember. Human. Be a human being. Everybody would have waved the flag and said, get him in there. But you know what I mean? It's like, nobody's showing that they're fucking the frailty of humanity on a public level. It's crazy to me. That's what people are dying for.
So it's like, so it's marketing up until now, even including social media. It's one way push, present something that's there. It's and some dialogue, they call it engagement, but that's not really it. With this platform, it's a little bit more like what you and I are doing, which is a conversation, right? And I think of the cultural conditioning that's gone awry is the same comment. Maybe tell me if you agree or not, which is don't ever talk about politics around friends and around the dinner table. I feel like if we actually did do that with friends and we did talk around the dinner table, maybe we'd be able to get along and actually talk about and work through problems more. It's like we almost conditioned not having conversations that we
I don't even think I think it's more simple than that.
Oh, let's hear it.
Be willing to support someone you love, even if they have a contrary opinion.
Totally.
I'll tell you something, man. There are hardcore Republicans and hardcore Democrats in my family, and I've watched the fucking shit go back and forth at holidays, and I'm like, it really doesn't affect my life what he thinks or how he wants to live his life. If that's how he wants, like, I still love my whatever, let's just say my aunt. Like, I still love my aunt and I can talk to her. So maybe we don't line up on politics. Let's talk about music we like. Let's talk about a movie that we both like. Let's talk about what a beautiful day it is. And we're both lucky to live today because people are dying from fentanyl overdoses every 5 minutes in this country, which, by the way, to anybody or any one of your listeners, and I always say this right now, there's a new batch of fentanyl that's hit this country that is deadlier than we've ever seen before, and people are dropping like flies. So please, please, please be careful. I implore you to get help. And if you don't want to get help, go to the fucking pharmacy for a pill. Don't get it from a dealer, because what they're doing is they're pressing it. They have these molds. They press fentanyl and all whatever shit they make their fake Xanax bars out of, and they distribute them to kids, and they're dying. So I just want to put that out there because hopefully I can prevent a death, because I've already had 3 of them since January 1, 2021.
Oh my God.
All fentanyl related. But anyway, my point is, like, the whole concept of America was supposed to be that we're allowed to have our thoughts and opinions and freedoms. And what we have now seems to be the polar opposite of that. And if somebody thinks different, they're the enemy.
Right.
No, they're not an enemy. They just think different. And how about don't hang out with that person if it really bothers you, if they're insulting to you. But like, why do we need to get so elevated with hatred? You know what I mean? Now, I understand that there's a fundamental part of the country that believes some really horrible things. And I think that let's be the change, not force the change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to engage with those people, and I'll still try and live the best life I can, and hopefully that'll rub off on somebody.
Well, that's kind of what you're doing. The beginning of a groundswell is a little start somewhere, right? Like getting the word out there. It multiplies, right? Like that is what, your message, to a heartfelt message. That's how it begins. That's how everything really that matters really begins, right? If it doesn't matter, people don't want to share it, right?
I think so. I think that's a lot of reason. If I can attribute it to music, that's why a lot of people love their favorite band's first or second record and nothing afterwards, because the first or second record is when they were true to themselves, and everything after was chasing the fucking more money, more this, more that, blah, 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 blah. And people get involved in record labels and managers. But it's usually like, oh, I like their early stuff. Yeah, there's no wonder, because that's when they were true to who they were.
And it's like you almost find your tribe when you go, yeah, everybody else likes that, and you find someone that likes the early stuff like you, and you're like, oh yeah, we're like in a different club.
Yeah, it is. Right? It is, because that's also when the band was most authentic,
right?
Because they didn't have the high-powered attorneys and lawyers and managers and PR people and saying, this kind of music's getting really big now. You guys should think about doing this. You know what I mean? Look at the early Billy Squier records. They're fucking great. And then look at Dancing in the Dark when he started listening to people. And that's what was one of the things that caused his downfall. Right. It was like, as soon as he started listening to other people instead of himself, he went away.
That's like business. Like I find all the time, like when I'm working with small business, they're wishing they were big. And the big businesses, when I've been in the boardrooms of the big companies, they're wishing they were small. They're going, how do we get more personal and one-to-one? And when they're small, they're going, how do we scale and go big? It's like, it's so funny. It's like, when you're a little kid, you always want to be an adult. And when you're old, you're like,
oh, I know. Well, I will say that I do not wish to be a little kid anymore. I'm very happy to be on this planet as long as I have. And I'm happy to have had an opportunity to be in bands when the music model worked. Because right now it's just, it's not even exciting anymore, So for me, I'm not saying it is that way. But, I loved it when I had to go to the record store and only connection I had to the band was the picture on the thing and the record and the liner notes. And that's it. I couldn't tweet the guy what I thought about it and wait for him to respond. Like, why am I entitled to tell Robert Plant what I think? Like, people do that now? Right. It's just a given now. Well, but back then there was mystery, and then your own creativity had to fill in the holes on your own and create some kind of vision for the whole thing, where it's just force fed to you. That's not exciting to me.
I don't want music for me sometimes is when you actually hear somehow they do an interview with somebody and go, what did you mean by these lyrics? And then they say it and I'm like, oh fuck, you ruined it, because I had this total different vision of what the lyrics were and it meant something to me. And I'm like, oh, you can't, like there's one that Sting song that Every Breath You Take, and everybody thinks it's like someone played at their wedding, and they don't realize it actually is like a song about, it's actually a song about somebody who's like stalking them or something like that, right?
Oh, that's interesting. That's terrifying.
I'm sorry, I probably ruined that song for you now, right? So
no, you actually made it much more interesting and have actually, to me, I found
every
more
breath
depth.
You take, every move you make, I'll be
watching you. Yeah. So I mean, you just created a layer, because I think one of the beautiful things about lyrical content is that might have been the answer he gave at the time, but the fact of the matter is that it's open, it's poetry, it's open to what the listener or the reader sees and hears, and now that you have injected a contradictory concept, there is by definition a duality within that song that to me expands the interest level and then the fascination component of that song, which before I thought it was just kind of a love song. And now you just gave it a layer that the crazy part is that the stalker thinks he's in love anyway.
Oh yeah, good point.
Think about that, because that is mental illness. So if you really want to break it down, the song might be about mental illness, where the stalker thinks that he's really following his heart. We've been told, follow your heart, follow your dreams. Well, I want to watch this girl through the window at 2 a.m. That's my heart and my dreams. Slow down there, kid. That's not what we mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't know that the guy may not be suffering from a mental disorder, and that's what he thinks they mean. So by telling me that, you have just made that song much more exciting. So thanks.
By here, although there's tons of them, I'm sure, with everybody that's got different lyrics.
Yeah.
I think of businesses, they try to maybe sometimes overplay their hand of not creating mystery. Like, that's what I liked about your unveiling is you leaned into, I was like curious. Like, I feel like there's this, we've lost with the social media and all the PR and all this nonsense, is we've lost our sense of, like when you said the record cover, like when I got Pyromania, I freaking love that cover. Mm-hmm. I must have played that. I think of any album I played, I probably played that more than any other album in my life. Wow. But that cover, just like, I was just in mystery with it, right? Like,
yeah, because when you're given very little, that's all you have, and it becomes sacred to you. When you're given everything slammed down your throat every 5 fucking minutes, I apologize to your viewers and listeners.
Oh, there's bombs dropped on this all the time. It's all good.
I'm not a bomb dropper. I'm a compulsive. I swear compulsively, because it's just become. I love the argument that like only stupid people use words like that. Well, no, that's not true. It's passionate, is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just, but. When everything's shoved down your throat, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, and it's really just like a swipe away till the next thing, really. Mm-hmm. Like, if that record came out with that cover and you saw that cover on Instagram, how long would you be looking at it? Not long. You would have swiped right by it, or looked at it once and swiped right by it. That's what I mean. And I hope you're right that things are going back to that. we like to make things with dual diagnosis that like people can have, people can hold, people can touch. We do, you don't want to buy a t-shirt, they're too expensive, whatever. We have a $20 poster for you that we sign. You don't like that? Here's some stickers that you can be a part of it at whatever level you want. Because all we're saying is that people who've been traumatized, people who suffer from mental illness, we're all part of a club. And now it's a club that's very hard to join and people don't want to join. But once you're in for life. So drop the shame aspect of it, because as we say, shame has never saved anyone. It just hasn't. You sit in shame, you're killing yourself.
You know, it's funny you say it, because that's the number one cause. That's the number one cause for prostate cancer is shame or embarrassment. Sorry. So it's similar, right?
It's definitely it's definitely similar, and I can see that because that shame, embarrassment, trauma, all those things that you're talking about manifests itself within this physiology on a very physical level. Your body, your heart rate elevates, your blood pressure goes up, your body releases cortisol through your body. So you feel buzzy and shaky and nervous, and all that kind of stuff is the body's physical response to trauma. And that's not me saying it. That's straight up, science. Right. I've read. I'm not a scientist. I obviously learned it. But
I was about to say, you're a scientist as well. Oh God!
Well, I try. You know what I try to do is I try to preemptively say the things that the guy out there who wants to tell me, "Oh yeah, you said this." I try and clean it up as I go, because I always know there's somebody who can't wait to fucking message me and say, "You think you're a scientist?" No, I don't think I'm a scientist.
You must be like really tough to always feel like you're like.
It's a nightmare.
On shells sometimes.
It's a nightmare because I came up at a time when there was no social media, and you would do interviews and that was it. Now you do interviews and you potentially hear back from the entire planet. Now
over and over again. Yeah.
Or you do interviews now and then 10 years from now, optics and things are going to change, and now I'm going to be destroyed because of something I said in 2021, where in 2037 things are different now, and so like now I'm going to go down for it. Like we've seen it a million times. Like this retroactive taking down of people that said things at a time when those things were normalized is just absolute insanity. Like, why aren't we all about forgiveness and empathy? And like, how come we can't allow human beings to grow and evolve? You know what? I did say that.
Like poor kids now, like they make, when I made my mistakes of doing some crazy stuff,
right?
It was recorded. I'm so happy I didn't have that around. Now I feel bad for kids going, they're just being kids, like, but now they're going to be crucified when they get older.
I am so grateful that there were no cell phones or any internet in the late 80s, early 90s. Let me put it to you that way. If there were, we probably wouldn't be having a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, it's people are fallible and we make mistakes all the time. And I want to be in a place where it's about forgiveness and growth and opportunity for growth, rather than, hey, I fucked up and I see the error of my ways and I'm sorry, like, and truly have an opportunity to grow. Because by not allowing that, by taking someone down for something they did a million years ago or said, I know there are actions that are unforgivable, but like say someone tweeted a stupid thing when they were a young kid and then they become successful and they go back to when he was 16 and go through his Twitter and like, aha, this guy said this thing, let's destroy his adult life now. Like, it's just absurd to me. You know what I mean? And what you're saying is, oh, so that guy probably wasn't allowed to see the error of his ways and change and grow and become somebody better as a result of learning those mistakes. You're going to penalize them anyway. I'm not talking about sex offenders. I'm talking about a stupid, I can't help but think of the Heisman Trophy winner that was like taken down because he said something as a kid that was like considered like homophobic like 10 years before. You know what I mean? Like, give the guy a break. He was a fucking kid, for crying out loud.
That's almost a shift that happened in culture, which the victim became a bully in some way.
I guess your way. I guess you're right about that. And
not that and honestly justified. It's not.
No. I hear you. And honestly, I could understand why a victim would want to become a bully for sure, and how how that looks good.
Well, it's kind of justified. Our culture goes, well, that's justified. They started it, but at some point the cycle's got to stop, I guess,
That's what I mean. I just want to stop the cycle. I don't know. I mean, I get a little wound up about things. You have to reel me in a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's okay. You're an agent for change. I mean, that's the thing that I find fascinating about you as a person. It's just like, I'm sure anyone that's listening, just you're not what I think until you get to know you, the more there's so much depth that I just find it interesting, and your desire to kind of give back in a way that's in your terms, on your level, and in a way that you want, I think is part of it. It's like, it's strategic. But I don't think you do it strategically. I think you just do it because that's what you want to do, right?
Well, I also don't want to interface with people who have bad ideas. So my dual diagnosis, we don't have a publicist, we don't have a manager, we don't have a team. It's me and my friend, and we have our agents who represent us as artists in New York. They're partners with us because we need business minds that know we don't know what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, we just made this stuff and was like, okay, here's our stuff. And like, but now we have to deal with filling orders, and that's, how to manufacture, fill orders, send them out, the whole thing. Like, we don't know anything about taxes. We don't know any of that stuff. We just were the creative part of it. So we have people that help us with that. But like, I could ram it down the world's throat, like, this is the new thing, and hire some fucking firm to like push it out. Like, I don't want that, because that's where it's just going to go south. That's where, like, I like this lifestyle. I like making stuff every day. I like waking up and interacting with some people who have been really moved by some things we did. And I've always said, man, I'd rather be sitting on the side of the road with jumper cables and a broken down, station wagon, waiting for someone to give me a jump and happy, than miserable on a fleet of private jets. Mm-hmm. Because there are people flying around the world in private jets, and they're fucking miserable people.
Yes.
I don't want any part of that. Yeah. I don't want any part of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of suffering and misery, and just, it's senseless. We don't have to do that way. We don't have to live that way.
Yeah. You want to live in a beautiful state, and people don't realize that they create their own suffering. And I'm the same way. Like, I can make way more money going marketing big companies like I was. There was no fulfillment for me. I get more fulfillment in helping businesses transform to be forces for good, or they are, and how can I help them grow. And Groundswell marketing, this methodology of doing word of mouth and being, intentional, being present, being helpful, making a difference, being a change agent, it's not for everybody.
No, it's not. And I'll tell you something else. If you had called me up on the phone and said, hey, come on my podcast to talk about this new Groundswell marketing idea, I would have said, it doesn't really sound like something I'd want to do, but I know you as a person. I was like, I didn't even know what we were going to talk about. Did you even notice that? I never asked.
You didn't.
You said, do you want to be on my podcast? I was like, yeah. I didn't know where this was going to go. I'm excited where it's going, but
we built trust, right? You trust me. Yeah, I'm not going to, there's some trust here.
Yeah. And so as it turns out, what you're actually doing is very much in line with what I'm doing. And I mean, in terms of the ideology behind it.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I agree. And I've always thought that when we got to know, we just never, it's just you kind of went away after the Tulsi Gabbard, and you were kind of doing your thing, which is,
well, I also shut down all social media and was very, very much against. I needed my life back.
You need to tap out. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I remember.
I'm like, what am I doing? Like, dancing around in front of however many people for what? Like, why does the world need to know every goddamn move I make?
Yeah.
They don't care, and they don't need to know. You know what I mean? And it wasn't really until I felt like I had something to give back and to share and say, oh, this is what I'm up to. And if you're interested, go check out this thing, even recently, I'm just really careful. I'm very selective about it. That's all. Like, rarely is it about me, and it's more about who I'm with and what I'm interested in and things that I love and things that I think are important, rather than like, some badass thing that I think is going to get me likes. I just don't like living that way.
Yeah, my podcast isn't exactly going to make your business blow up. So my audience,
no, I know,
but on the flip side though, you are going to shed light and make a difference in my audience, which is looking for, like, it's all about me demonstrating in different ways with meaningful people that you can, this business and this approach, it's not just the outcome of growth of the business, but it's also the growth of your personal journey and being happy all along the way. It's like, it matters.
It
and
does.
some people, you've been on the other side, you've achieved all this success, and here you are doing this approach. And to me, I'm going, it not only is it smart from a business standpoint, and it beats out the systems, and it's cheaper, and it's sustainable. By the way, it's also really fun.
It's a blast. It's having so much fun. I've never been happier or had more fun in my life. And I've had a long, successful and life, and one with many pitfalls and low points as well. And I can tell you that never in my whole life have I been more at peace. And it's because I let go of all that stuff. Like, I just don't care. It just, I know it's not the answer. And like, even for those people who money or fame or a certain amount of accolades is the answer and they achieve it, it becomes about keeping it. Now you have a whole new worry. Like, now I have to sustain this. I have to better it. I have to, it never ends, man. It's like, it's the addicted hamster.
Consumption. It's like constant consumption. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the addicted hamster with the drug infused water bottle in the cage, like he just wants more and more and more and more. And like, that's what we turn into lab rats.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. We've hit an hour. I could easily take two. If there's anything else you want to wrap up and share, and do you want to let them know where they can go and check out your gear?
Sure. Yeah. We have a site called dueldiagnosis.com. It's DUEL diagnosis.com. And all I'd ask you to do is there's a 3-minute video that we made that just kind of has a story about these two little characters living through trauma and finding each other and finding happiness and creating their own reality. And then go look over at the manifesto, which is what our company is about. I don't care if you buy anything. I don't care if you like the merchandise, but I think that the manifesto might have some information in it that could be useful to somebody. Don't even look at the shirts. I don't care.
Love it. Right on. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, you got it. Anytime, Scott. Anything for you. And please send my love to Tulsi if you speak to her.
You bet. So just hang on. I'm just going to end the recording. Then you and I can jump off and chat. Okay. And everyone that's listening, thank you again for listening to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. As usual, just go to groundswell.fm and there's an mic there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a voicemail. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I'd love to hear your feedback. And until next time, mahalo.